Yes, Majority Leader.
Speaker, thank you very much. I got up when you mentioned page 2. Unfortunately, I think I wasn't timeous enough. But Speaker, our colleague, the secondary speaker, is here. On page 2, its number is 53. Speaker, may we know from him whether he spells Zamuakun with K-U or K-O? I've always assumed that it's K-O.
Honorable Second Deputy Speaker, yes.
Right, Honorable Speaker, I was going to address this particular issue. So I'm thankful to the Majority Leader for bringing it to the fore. So, table, if you can address it. Thank you, Mr. It's yes. Instead of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Table office is Amuako is spelled with an O at the end. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Yes, Honourable Member.
Most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, at page 8, item number 2, the Honourable James Agaga was present in the chamber last Friday. Indeed, I engaged him in discussions during the tribute when we eulogized the former president. So if it can be corrected. He's not here. I'm sure he will have raised it. He was in the chamber. I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Member. He's talking about item 4, sub number 2. Page 9. Yes. Honourable Members, it will be difficult for me to identify you because the lights are just direct.
May I speak?
Directed at my I can't see.
May I speak? Haruna Idrisu.
Yes.
I know the leader of government business as Honorable Osei Mensa Bonsu, hyphenated, but the official correspondence from the present office, his name was not hyphenated. Are we reporting what is in the official correspondence from the present office or reporting the reality? I know it is him.
Well, I saw it from the official correspondence from the office of the president. And since we knew it was referring to our honorable member for Swami, a long-standing member of this house, I think the clerk's office did the right thing by properly capturing the spelling of his name. He has only 2 names. One is Osei, the other is Chei Mensa Bonsu. Page 10. Yes, Honorable James Abeji Kuluche.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on same page 9, item Roman number 10, the official correspondence from the President for the Minister for Communications and Digitalization, the nominee, reads Honorable Osla Osu Ekufu, MP. But on page 9, Roman number 10, the name reads Honorable Osla Gifty Osu Ekufu. So, Speaker, I don't know whether we are referring to the same person. So we need that clarification to be made. Thank you.
Leader of government business, you may help us in this direction. Are we referring to the same person?
Mr. Speaker, I believe we are referring to the same person, but the rules and proceedings, I believe, captures exactly the correspondence from the presidency through you to Parliament. Speaker, that is what has been captured. So, with any corrections, they will be effected subsequently. I know Alan Chiramatin. The full name is Alan Kojo Chiramatin. I will just have Alan Chiramatin. I think Godfrey Dame is also Godfrey Yeboah Dame. So we'll look at these things and effect. So, Speaker, will do what is appropriate. And if there are any questions, they will be effected accordingly.
Yes, table office usually capture what is presented to us. Then, during the course of correction of rules and proceedings, these things could be done. The challenge you will have is that members must be vigilant because not all the nominees are members of Parliament. Even if they are, they might not be present. And so it's important that members draw our attention so that we can correct and get the proper names of the nominees. Now, page, yes, Honourable Member for Efutu.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, at page 9, item XII, Dr. Matthew Poku Prempe. Mr. Speaker, for the records, the minister designate for energy is a member of Parliament. And if you look on the list, all those who are members of Parliament have been addressed as such honorable. So if that correction could be made. Thank you.
Well, this connection is in respect of all members of Parliament who were nominated, but I can see that there are some where it has not been indicated that they were members of Parliament, but the President did indicate in the correspondence that they were members of Parliament. You have Honorable Dominic B.A. Nitiwul, for example, Honorable Ambrose Dere, there are plenty of them. So table office, kindly take note. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I was trying to catch your eye when you were moving from page 10 to 11. Matter of law. I see that the official correspondence from the President reference Article 78(1) of the Constitution. But at the tail end of the list were regional ministers. My understanding, as I've read the decentralized provisions of the Constitution, starting from chapter 25 of the Constitution, is that regional ministers fall within I just want your guidance, fall within the categories of ministers anticipated under Article 255 of the 1992 Constitution. So when you say ministers of state, this is a matter we could raise at the appointments committee, but regional ministers construed as part of ministers appointed under the decentralized specific provisions in the Constitution, so that the handlers tomorrow would know that there is a distinction between that category of state ministers at the level of cabinet and regional ministers as anticipated in Article 2551 of the Constitution.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the minority leader is right in the observation, but I thought that item 5 on page 8, distinction was made. Item 5, page 8, the distinction is made between the ministers of state appointed by the president or nominated by the president for appointment in respect of Article 78(1). And indeed, what the leader quoted for us, he quoted 255. Really, it's even 256(1). And it's captured here. So I don't know what he really meant by the fact that they belong to two categories. Yes, indeed, they belong to two categories. And I think the communication catches it.
Yes, I think the explanation suffices. Page 12. Page 13. Honorable members, the votes and proceedings of the safe sitting of the first meeting of the first session held on Friday, 22nd January 2021 as corrected are adopted as a true record of proceedings. We will now move to statements. I have admitted two statements from two members of parliament, and I will permit the members to present the statements, and I will do so in the order that I received them. The first statement stands in the name of the Honorable Member Old Tafo, Honorable Vincent Eko Asafwa, which is on the International Day of Education. Honorable Member, you may now present your statement.
The Right Honorable Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to deliver a statement in commemoration of the International Day of Education, a day set aside by the United Nations to celebrate the role of education for peace and development. The day fell on Sunday, the 24th day of January 2021. It was celebrated around the world yesterday, the 25th day of January 2021. Mr. Speaker, I believe now is an opportune time to make a statement in honor of the day. Permit me, the Right Honorable Speaker, to refer to one of the often quoted assertions by the distinguished South African statesman and global icon, Nelson Mandela, on the essence of education. Education, Madiba says, is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So authoritative is this statement that it has struck many chords, reverberating in halls around the world and inscribed on the walls of some of the most eminent institutions of higher learning around the world. Mr. Speaker, for us as Africans and Ghanaians, so to speak, those hallowed words are inscribed on our hearts. I believe many of us seated here are testaments of this fact that education really changes everything. Indeed, the acquisition of knowledge, Mr. Speaker, uplifts the downtrodden, gives a village boy a sense of hope, and make global icons of people who grew up in tattered penury and would have otherwise not meant much for this world. We know the story of a little boy born in 1938 at Kumasi in the Gold Coast, rising to become the 7th General Secretary of the United Nations in 1997. Obviously, education gave him that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, there are many all too familiar stories around the globe. And as the son of a teacher myself, and as many are aware of my last job as the Public Relations Officer of the Ministry of Education, I have seen firsthand this value I speak about, and its many potentials, stories of change brought about by an excellent pedagogy, a highly rewarded teacher, a resourceful library, decent classrooms, tireless students, and a favorable government policy. I'm also reminded, Mr. Speaker, of the many challenges that need to be addressed to enhance the experience of education for Ghanaian children. In Africa, indeed, many honorable members would bear me out that there are still parents who are grappling with the choice of whether their kids should work on the farms or go to school. There are still teachers whose rewards are nothing to write home about. And in some parts of our rural areas, especially, education is carried out under the most bizarre conditions. Mr. Speaker, it's for good reasons that the United Nations recognizes education as a human right, a public good, and a public responsibility. And I believe as legislators, government officials, and leaders in many spheres, this is a charge worthy of our reflection. But Mr. Speaker, the Ghanaian story is not all gloomy. On the 6th of September 2018, His Excellency President Akufo-Addo received an award from the African Leadership University in Kigali, Rwanda, in recognition of his extraordinary commitment to education by implementing free universal education in Ghana. This has been the list of the laurels and endorsement this president has received for his singular ambition and commitment to the implementation of the now very popular free SHS policy. Free SHS is single-handedly the biggest and the most revolutionary social policy by any government in our fourth Republican democracy, in my view, and I'm happy, based on the experience of the last election, that today we have a better consensus on this policy as compared to previous elections. Mr. Speaker, education is about possibility and potentials. It's It is the potential of redefining basic education from kindergarten to include senior high school education, covering vocational, agricultural, as well as technical schools, and the possibility of granting access to millions of children. It's about the commitment to revive the loss of teachers by converting teacher training colleges into degree awarding institutions and making sure allowances due teacher trainees are paid. Mr. Speaker, it has very much to do with the potential benefits of over 1,011 projects initiated to expand access in senior high schools and the effort to revamp the learning of critical subjects such as maths and science by constructing 20 science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics centers across the country, as well as the first creative arts at the senior high school level. Most important of all, Mr. Speaker, is about the possibility of reforming the curricula to ensure that children educated here in Ghana can compete with children anywhere in the world and improving quality at the basic education level. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to belong to a side that believes that it's possible, and I have no doubt that there are many great feasts to be chopped in the coming future. And so, I would like to use this occasion, Mr. Speaker, to celebrate His Excellency the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for his sterling vision on education. Of course, I cannot forget the Venerable Honorable Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, the Honorable Dr. Yawase Aduchum, Professor Kwesi Yankah, Honorable Gifty Twim Ampofo, and the immediate past Deputy Minister of Education in charge of TVET, Mrs. Barbara Asha Ayusi, for their remarkable leadership the last 4 years at the Ministry of Education, driving the MPP's vision of ensuring that no child is left behind. We also celebrate past Ministers of Education and Directors of the Ghana Education Service, and indeed, all educationists and people in our country committed to the education of the Ghanaian child. And, Mr. Speaker, our honorable MPs cannot be left behind. Many of them have taken up the task of paying lots and lots of school fees, although we are aware that in recent times, the free senior high school has somewhat reduced this burden significantly. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the theme for this year's celebration is Recover and Revitalize Education for the COVID-19 Generation. As highlighted by the United Nations, now is the time to power education by stepping up collaboration and international solidarity to place education and lifelong learning at the center of the recovery. Our nation will continue to be thankful to the many stakeholders of education as we continue to navigate the raging waters of learning and the impact of knowledge, even in a pandemic. Like the President has often said, this too shall pass. Mr. Speaker, I thank you once again and this Honorable House for the kind attention. I thank you.
Honorable members, any comments to be made, taking into consideration that this statement was admitted under Order 71. Order 71. It's not a statement under Order 72. Yes, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity for me to add my voice to the statement read by my colleague, Member of Parliament from Tafo. It is obvious that education has made all of us sitting here whom we are. And without education, societies will never achieve the progress and development that they seek to have. Mr. Speaker, looking at our history, you realize that all previous presidents and current ones have seen the need to ensure that education becomes a centerpiece towards our socio-economic development. Our first president, Mr. Osadefo Kwame Nkrumah, seeing the need of education, made sure that education became accessible in some parts of the country, specifically in the northern regions of this country. The essence of education has also led to so many reforms within our education system. In the late 1960s, Professor Kopom of the University of Ghana was of the view that the curriculum at the advanced level of education in this country needed to be taken a critical look at. 1972, Jobo's committee also recommended some reforms in our education sector. In the year 2007, we also saw the Anama Mensah Committee also underscoring the need for us to have some form of paradigm shift in our education system. Mr. Speaker, our current president also seeing the relevance of education in this country, make sure that education at the pre-tertiary level, especially at the senior high school, was to be made accessible to all school-going children within that age category. Based on that, Mr. Speaker, we've seen that about 1.2 million of our school-going children found themselves at school. All these are attempts to ensure that education in this country became strengthened. Mr. Speaker, education at the pre-tertiary level is very critical, especially at the preschool level, where we need to prepare the minds of our preschoolers for them to appreciate the value of education, enjoy it, and also contribute to it. Mr. Speaker, based on that, we've seen a lot of progress in the educational front. That is why this day becomes imperative for all of us to celebrate. Mr. Speaker, recently, I was the head of the National Accreditation Board. And under this government, we've seen some interventions that the government rolled out. Especially in the year 2018, we saw that the colleges of education are now running 4-year Bachelor of Education programs. And that's very important, historic, because this is the first time we are experiencing that. And the idea is to prepare the teacher to acquire the needed competencies and knowledge to ensure that our kids receive the best of knowledge, so that those who want to go to the training colleges or college of education wouldn't see it as a step-gap measure, but as a profession they love and they want to engage in. Just last year, Mr. Speaker, University of Cape Coast, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, introduced a trimester degree program to give opportunity to all those students who have diploma qualifications, because we don't run diploma programs again. That's why I want to stand here and commend our president for his foresight in ensuring that education becomes a priority in his administration. No wonder we are seeing tremendous gains during his tenure. Mr. Speaker, before I take my leave, today we are celebrating our first president under the Fourth Republic dispensation. I must also say that during his tenure, we also saw some positives in our education front. On that score, I want to sit with my honorable friend and impress upon all leaders to continue to make education a cardinal priority in our socio-economic
developmental pathway. On that score, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity once again.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to thank the maker of the statement for drawing our attention to the important day declared by the UN, particularly UNESCO, for the observation of Education Day under the theme, as he rightly captured it, Recover and Revitalize Education for the COVID-19 Generation. And Mr. Speaker, in doing so, to note that 1 year into the COVID, is reported in the UNESCO headquarters in Paris that over 800 million students, more than half the world's student population, still face significant disruptions to their education, ranging from full school closures in 31 countries to reduced or part-time academic schedules in another 48 countries. Mr. Speaker, it's further reported that about 258 million of youth and children are not in school, and about 617 million adults and adolescents, 617 million adolescents cannot read. It is further reported that about 40% of young girls are not in the area of science. Whilst I commend the maker of the statement, he should also appreciate that the foundations were laid even for the present free senior high school initiative. That is why, in particular, those students benefiting from it are sleeping in dormitories built by previous governments. They are in classrooms previously built. So its success hinges on other early investment made in the education sector. Mr. Speaker, whilst commending him, I have just one primary concern. And my concern is, whilst we celebrate this day, what are we doing as a country today to assure Ghanaian children who have just reopened school? What is government doing for school people? Are they protected? Are there sufficient measures to get them protected from the dangers of COVID? Are teachers sufficiently taken care of to manage themselves and to manage people on behalf of parents, even as we do in a COVID? That is why the UNESCO this year said that recover and revitalize education for the COVID-19 generation. Mr. Speaker, we are not in normal times. We are in extraordinary times. And I shudder to add that even in Ghana today, we are not being fair to Ghanaian children in public schools. What is it that we are doing in order not to widen inequality and ensure equity in access to education? Our children are benefiting from Zoom because probably they are privileged children who have access to private education, quality private education. So it exists in Ghana today wide disparity between the provision of public education and private education. There exists wide disparity in respect of rural-urban education. The people in the rural areas cannot access quality education. So whilst we celebrate today, government must reflect and ponder over what it is that it needs to do to avoid inequality growing in our country. COVID may produce another set of poverty. In fact, yesterday it is reported that 500 million people in the world are likely to fall into the poverty line arising out of poverty. I have even said that the United Nations General Assembly, if it meets, I'm sure it was a UNGA decision to have this day declared. They probably, even the targets they set for us as countries on the Sustainable Development Goals, they have to redefine it and redefine the time periods, because many countries will not be able to meet the targets, even the target that is relating to education. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend the maker of the statement, but let it wake us up that we need to do something about Ghanaian children in what is called the Saito schools, the public schools. They don't have Zooms in their homes. They don't even have television sets in their homes. And Mr. Speaker, I say so because If they lose their foundation years, forget it. This is the only period they can learn numeracy and literacy. And if you have school children sit at home for 8 months, you know, Mr. Speaker, I end with this real joke. In Tamale, in my constituency, between Wamale and Chanjeni, many of the young people were now learning to play catapult, tire, though when there was no school. This is a real story. In the morning, you see them in clusters, and what they were interested in is how to go and chase people with catapult. Is that the youth we are looking forward to train tomorrow? Because they have no access to education. Mothers and fathers became teachers. In fact, many mothers and fathers have appreciated teachers arising out of COVID, because the burden of socialization, which shifted largely to teachers whilst the pupils were in school, now shifted to parents. They will manage them in the morning, manage them in the afternoon, and manage them in the evening with difficulty. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend the maker of the statement, but we should know that in Ghana, we need to take urgent steps to ensure that they don't lose their foundation training and foundation years. With COVID, government must take the necessary urgent steps to provide those personal protection facilities for both teachers and pupils, particularly in public schools. With these few comments, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and once again, I commend the maker of the statement.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. And I also want to commend my honorable colleague from Old Trafford for the statement that he has just made. I also want to thank the minority leader for the challenge he has thrown to all of us. Minority leader, I want to assure you, as the Minister of Education designate, if you help me and I become the minister, these are issues that I have been assured will be solved. And with your input, we are going to do a better job educating the children of Ghana in the midst of this pandemic. I think the pandemic serves as a lesson to all of us. When we talk about the disparities we see in terms of education and the fact that Zooms are not available in public school setting and families whose children go to public schools, we must not lose sight of the fact that it is happening because of the digital divide that we find ourselves confronting with in this country. The digital divide therefore finds expression in education divide. And for us to be able to solve the challenge of education divide, we have to go to the root of the problem and solve the digital divide. The good news is that the Ministry of Communication is now looking at rural connectivity. And when you solve the challenges of rural connectivity, that is when families who even have the phones have the opportunity to get signals and be able to help their children do the work. Their children in so the rich neighborhoods are able to do. So, Mr. Speaker, yes, there are challenges, but therein lies opportunities for all of us to be able to say that in the midst of the pandemic, that decimated the education system, that actually made the learning poverty worse. You know, learning poverty is generally defined by the World Bank as a phenomenon by which age 10 students who are age 10, children who are age 10 are not able to read or write. In fact, in developing countries, it's about 53% before COVID-19. So you can imagine that with COVID-19, it may be 70% of children who are age 10 not being able to read for understanding. So we have to have all hands on deck. It's not just going to be the Ministry of Education. It's going to be all of us as leaders of this country working under the leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who is determined to ensure that education became that vehicle for socio-economic transformation. So we have an opportunity to support the president and do whatever it takes to ensure that not only would we fight learning poverty pre-COVID-19, but also fight learning poverty post-COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to celebrate the gallant men and women who are called teachers. Teachers are at the forefront of socioeconomic transformation. They are frontline workers who are doing everything to ensure that our children are educated, that there will be a future for this great nation of ours. So today, teachers, I celebrate you. I also celebrate parents for their courage to support their children, to provide all the necessary resources that their children can also get back to school and do what we need them to do so that we can truly provide education under these difficult circumstances. At this time, education and COVID-19 have become strange bedfellows. And we are going to have to navigate through this, understanding that if we don't, the price we pay will be severe. So do everything possible to ensure that we navigate through this terrain carefully so that our children can benefit from education whilst we protect them from the vagaries of this pandemic that is threatening our very survival. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity.
I cannot identify any more member who wants to contribute. And so I will just make this short comment. Important for us in such situations, try to put some things in the right perspective. You all recall the great illustrious son of Ghana who was born in Choko, called James Emman Kwejiri Agri, one of the forebearers of education in the whole of Africa. I'm referring to this and I'll be quoting his statement because we are often told that he said, if you educate a man, you simply educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a whole nation. What they fail to tell us is that he predicated this statement with a more profound statement, which says, and I quote, "The surest way to keep people down is to educate the man and neglect the woman." That is a more profound statement. And so this was a revolutionary statement which led to co-education in the Gold Coast and the establishment of the Achimota Secondary School. But what is even more relevant for our purpose is what he said, and I quote, "I don't care what you know. Show me what you can do." So education is not just a matter of degrees. How do you translate that into action? into producing something good for society. And that is why I say, I don't care what you know. Show me what you can do. And so with the sister or brotherly country, India is celebrating their Independence Day. So I'll admit a statement to be made today in commemoration of that celebration. But let's take the second statement, which stands in the name of the honorable member for Bole Bamboy, Honorable Suleimana Yusuf. The statement is on the effects of seasonal bushfires on livelihoods and on the economy. Honorable member, you may now make your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to make a statement on the important subjects of bushfires, which for many decades has negatively impacted rural livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, January 19, 2021, the Ghana Meteorological Agency issued a press statement on the subject Harmattan Weather Alert. In the statement, the agency knows that from 20th January 2021, Harmattan will intensify as dry and dusty continental winds from Chad will be entering Ghana. The statement cautions that the northern half of our country is expected to be drier with an increased probability of fire outbreaks. It has therefore become extremely necessary for this House to take notice of this issue and to offer valuable insights to the citizenry. Mr. Speaker, lately, the damaging effects of bushfires, especially in the Savannah zone, have been exacerbated by the effects of climate change. The Savannah zone, as we are all aware, Mr. Speaker, is characterized by large expanse of dry fields. Consequently, in the Harmattan season, it is common to see unhindered winds traveling on average at 50 kilometers per hour, and in the process, causing uncontrollable bushfires. The adverse impacts of these fires on rural economics and folks cannot be overemphasized. Mr. Speaker, a social survey conducted by Kissimmee and Apathy 2012 showed that bushfires have impacted individuals and in some cases whole communities in the form of loss of lives and or property. Mr. Speaker, their survey presented evidence of cases where parts or whole communities are razed down and large tracts of fields of maize, rice, cassava, cashew, mango, etc. destroyed. On households or community level, millions of Ghana cedis in properties are estimated to be lost in the last decades due to major wildfires. Mr. Speaker, aside the above, installations, especially electrical poles, are bent and have to be replaced on a yearly basis. The disruption of power supply resulting from this over the years have negatively affected the socioeconomic activities and livelihoods of citizens, especially those engaged in the sale of food, cold store, and beverage drink businesses. In most cases, these people are forced to discard large quantities of rotten stock at their own expense, without even considering its impact on other small-scale artisanal industries like welding. It is almost impossible to quantify the loss in monetary terms of these annual occurrences. Mr. Speaker, while the effect of bushfires on agricultural and other artisanal productivity is well documented, especially with the 1983 crisis still fresh in the minds of people, its effects on the natural environment has mostly been ignored. Devastating fires alter ecosystems by removing vegetative covers and modifying soil characteristics. Indeed, scientific research has shown that high temperatures destroy soil, organic matter, damage soil structure, and microorganisms. Mr. Speaker, climate change has not only intensified Harmattan, it has also altered its onset and longevity. Previously, almost all recorded cases of bushfires outbreaks start from the month of November and should be phasing out by close of January. This statement by the Ghana Meteorological Agency I referred to shows that things have changed. Mr. Speaker, what has not changed is the human causes of bushfires and the ways by which people can protect themselves against these fires. Mr. Speaker, anthropogenic activities account for almost all the fires in this country. In every part of this country, fire is generally accepted as a valuable tool in the management of natural vegetation. Farmers, in a lot of cases, use fires to clear lands for farming, particularly during the dry season. Herdsmen also use fires as a tool to encourage quick regrowth of fresh grazing pastures for their animals, just as the activities of charcoal burners and hunters. Mr. Speaker, while the use of fires in these instances enumerated above are for economic purposes, the accidental spillovers of these fires is the cause of concern. Mr. Speaker, the economic activities of one person must not affect that of other people. There are reports of people losing hundreds of acres of crop fields because someone else is trying to smoke out a rat. This cannot be acceptable. The expected rewards from such endeavors, Mr. Speaker, are not worth the cost occasioned by these destructive annual fires. The cost of these fires on an annual basis is becoming too huge to bear by our countrymen and women in the rural areas. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, it is high time we found solutions to these menaces. In this regard, I suggest we look at this on three levels: individual, community, and national. On an individual level, Mr. Speaker, I recommend a coordinated educational program aimed at effecting attitudinal change and showing people the impact of their activities. On a communal level, the Ghana Fire Service must be encouraged to continue and improve its community fire committee program, where committees of young men are formed in every community and trained to act as the first line of defense in case of a fire outbreak. This program appears to be very dormant and in most cases non-existent in most parts of the North. I implore the Chief Fire Officer, as a matter of policy, to convey this to his district officers, the need for these committees to be formed, as soon as possible. Indeed, PNDC Law 229 sanctions the creation of bushfire control subcommittees in every district. Mr. Speaker, these committees, where they exist, should lead efforts in fire prevention and control in these communities. Where necessary, the Assembly Subcommittee must guide burning of bushes in controlled manner to avoid accidental spillovers. On the national level, Mr. Speaker, the desire of successive governments to enforce and, when necessary, strengthen the law on bushfire appears to be the bane of this issue. Mr. Speaker, PNDC Law 229 must be enforced fully. District assemblies must be made to perform their duties as set out in the law. The punitive measures as captured in Section 11I and II must be enforced to deter people from engaging in bush burning. Mr. Speaker, I encourage government to treat this issue with urgency. We must be guided by happenings in other countries. Mr. Speaker, the bushfires in California sometimes last year led to catastrophic losses, and that alone must act as a wake-up call for us in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, COVID has already ravaged the livelihoods of many Ghanaians. Bushfires will further compound our woes if uncontrolled. I believe that the suggestions I have made above will go a long way to protect all of us. I thank you once again, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Honorable members, this is a statement that falls under Order 72. And so comments will be guided by that standing order. Yes, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the statement made by my senior colleague on bushfires, and which is truly having a devastating effect on our environment. Right Honorable Speaker, bushfires, normally recorded in this part of our world, comes in during the dry season, the Harmattan time, and it's normally within the November and October, November to March. Right Honorable Speaker, if not the SDG, which also talks about SDG number 15, which talks about the life. It talks about activities of human in supporting the environment. One of these activities is protecting the soil and its nutrients to make things to able to improve our normal lives. Bushfire, as stated by the maker of the statement, is something that is causing the farmer to lose a lot on the activities in their various farmlands. Right Honorable Speaker, it is important to say that 100% of these bushfires happens within the northern part of our country. And it is important to note also that it is in line with some of our colleagues or our people looking for their daily lives. Right Honorable Speaker, charcoal is one of the main sources of our fuel which we use in our various homes. If you go to part of our northern region, charcoal is a source of livelihood for some of our colleagues there. Right Honorable Speaker, in going through this process, they end up causing these bushfires. Right Honorable Speaker, it is also important to note that some of these bushfires are caused by these nomadic farmers. It is important also to note that normal peasant farmers also contribute to this increase in bushfires. However, as the statement of the maker said, it is important that we find a lasting solution to enable us be able to have a harmonized policy that will help fight these bushfires across the country. Indeed, the statement maker suggested the idea of community groups. Right Honorable Speaker, I'll also bring on board that we bring on board the school clubs. The clubs, in terms of bushfire clubs, that will help these children to assimilate at the early stages the effect of bushfires within their communities. Right Honorable Speaker, I will also support the statement maker that in trying to help the issue, it is important to practice tree planting. It is important that we enhance our tree planting in our various constituencies. As leaders, let's take up that charge. Let's take up that role to support tree planting to enable us fight bush fires as stated by my senior colleague. I thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member. Oh.
Very much, Right Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to associate myself with the statement that has been made by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Bali. The Speaker, indeed, bushfires continue to cause havoc in many parts of this country. And a lot of data shows, especially how it has affected food production over the years. It has also highlighted its effects on our environment, especially the forest cover of our country. But Mr. Speaker, an area that has not been highlighted much over the years by research as an effect of bushfire is its effect also lately to electrification across the country. Mr. Speaker, in many communities in the north, you are likely to be faced with the inability of the Electricity Company of Ghana or the Northern Electricity Department, NEDCO, their inability to connect these communities to the national grid as a result of bushfires that affect the electric poles that are usually erected. In some communities, years after the poles are planted, every season when the poles are affected, the ability of the company to connect these communities to electricity is affected because the cost of the destruction is usually a problem as to who will bear the cost of the destruction to these electric poles. So, Mr. Speaker, the effect of bushfires have gone beyond what is traditionally known in relation to food production, in relation to our vegetation cover, and it is now affecting even the expansion of electricity, which is very much required in the development of our country. Mr. Speaker, over the years, research has led to a number of policy, positions that have been taken. We can recall PNDC Law 46, which was repealed by PNDC Law 229. And what all those were supposed to ensure in the prevention of bushfires and also dealing with bushfires adequately. We also have come as a nation to put together a policy that was also supposed to guide how we dealt with bushfires as a country. Unfortunately, many of the very well thought out ideas in these policies remain on the shelves to gather dust. And perhaps it is about time that we made some institutions more responsible for the implementation of these policies. Because if you look at PNDC Law 229, it is quite difficult for one institution to be held responsible for its implementation or lack of it. And that is why perhaps it is important that we look at that law again and make an institution responsible for the implementation of these very beautiful ideas that are either contained in policies or in this law. Because under the PNDC 229, you realize that the district and municipal assemblies that are supposed to lead sometimes shirk the responsibility and shift it to the fire service department or even the forestry department. But because there is no clear responsibility as to who should ensure that bushfires are prevented and, infractions